Sometimes the greatest acts of kindness come from those who have the least to give. In a small town where everyone minds their own business, Mike Thompson's modest two-bedroom house barely contains his own struggles as a single father. Yet when he discovers a beaten woman and her eerily quiet son huddled behind his gas station one rainy night, he doesn't hesitate to offer them shelter. No questions asked, just a warm meal and a safe place to rest. What Mike doesn't know is that this simple act of compassion is about to turn his world upside down. This boy isn't just any child. He's the missing heir to one of America's largest fortunes. But when billions are at stake, can the authentic bonds of love and trust survive the storm that's coming? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The leather of Mike Thompson's wallet had worn thin at the edges, cracked and softened by years of worried fingers checking and rechecking its contents. Inside, behind the plastic window where most people kept their driver's license, was a school. Photo of 8-year-old Sarah. Her missing front tooth and unruly red curls matched her mother's in the faded photograph tucked behind it. That older picture Mike touched less often these days, though he couldn't bring himself to remove it. "Daddy, we're out of milk again," Sarah called from the kitchen, her voice carrying the slight lisp that her missing teeth created. "And Cheerios." Mike checked the wallet one more time, counting the meager collection of bills. $37 to last until Friday's paycheck. He glanced at the calendar on the fridge, where Sarah had helpfully circled Thursday's date. In red marker, "School play, don't forget." The $5 admission ticket suddenly loomed large in his mental calculations. "We'll stop by the store after my shift tonight, Pumpkin," he called back, trying to keep his voice light. "How about oatmeal this morning? Mrs. Chen taught me her secret cinnamon recipe." The mention of their elderly neighbor brightened Sarah's face. "With the brown sugar she gave us?" "Just a little," Mike smiled, reaching for the mason jar Mrs. Chen had pressed into his hands last week. Can't let her secret ingredient go to waste. As he stirred the oatmeal, Mike's eyes drifted to the pile of bills on the counter. The gas station job barely covered the basics, even with the promotion. To night manager 6 months ago. The repair shop where he'd worked for 12 years had closed down right after Clara's passing, and in a town this small, opportunities were as rare as rain in August. Sarah appeared at his elbow, already dressed in her school uniform, her backpack clutched in one hand. "I made my lunch," she announced proudly, holding up a slightly squashed peanut butter sandwich in a recycled Ziploc bag. Mike's heart squeezed. 8 years old and already trying to take care of him. "That's my girl," he said, ruffling her hair. "But let's add an apple, okay? Growing brains need fuel." After dropping Sarah at school, Mike drove the long way to Mrs. Chen's house. The elderly seamstress had been Clara's closest friend, and since the funeral, she'd appointed herself as their unofficial guardian angel. Mike hated accepting help, but Mrs. Chen had a way of making it feel like she was the one receiving a favor. "Ah, Michael," she greeted him, already holding a paper bag. "I altered too many pants this week. Too much leftover food for one old lady. You take?" They both knew it wasn't true. Mrs. Chen's alterations business was the most successful shop in town, but Mike accepted the bag with a grateful nod. "Sarah loved your cinnamon secret," he said, "though I'm sure I didn't." "Make it as well as you do." Mrs. Chen's eyes crinkled. "Love is best ingredient. You have plenty of that." She patted his arm. "Clara would be proud, Michael. You doing good job." The words followed him through his morning shift at the gas station, through the mindless routine of restocking shelves and checking inventory. Clara would be proud. He hoped so. Some days it felt like he was barely treading water, but Sarah was happy, healthy, and still believed in magic and possibility. That had to count for something. The afternoon sun was setting when his phone buzzed, with Sarah's daily after-school check-in. "Hi, Daddy. Mrs. Rodriguez gave me an A on my science project. Can we put it on the fridge when you get home?" "You bet we can, Pumpkin. Proud of you. Did you finish your homework?" "Almost. Just math left. Will you help me when you get home? Of course. Remember, Mrs. Chen is bringing you dinner at 6. Don't forget to thank her. I won't. Love you, Daddy. Love you too, sweetheart. Mike slipped the phone back into his pocket, smiling despite his exhaustion. The night shift would be long, but tomorrow was payday. Maybe, just maybe they could afford both milk and Cheerios this time. The security cameras at Tommy's Gas and Go had seen better days. Their grainy footage flickered across the ancient monitor behind the counter, showing distorted images of empty pumps gleaming under fluorescent lights. Mike squinted at the bottom, left screen where something, probably another plastic bag caught in the wind, fluttered behind the dumpster. Thunder rolled in the distance as he began his final rounds for the night. These quiet hours between 10 and midnight usually passed in a blur of inventory checks and half-hearted attempts at the community college textbook he kept behind the counter. Tonight, though, something felt different. The air hung heavy with more than just the approaching storm. His phone lit up with Sarah's nightly text. "Mrs. Chen taught me to make dumplings. Saved you some. Don't work too hard." Mike smiled, typing back his usual response, when movement on the security monitor caught his eye. This time, it wasn't a plastic bag. A woman, hunched against the rain, was hurrying behind the dumpster. Something about her movement seemed wrong, too careful, too pained. Behind her, barely visible in the poor lighting, a small figure clutched her hand. Mike's hand hovered over the phone. Protocol said to call the police about loiterers. 3 years ago, they'd had trouble with teenagers using that spot for drug deals. But something in the woman's posture, in the protective way she held the child close, made him hesitate. The store bell chimed. Tommy Garcia, owner of Tommy's Gas and Go for 35 years, shuffled in shaking rain from his jacket. "Quiet night. Mike?" "Yeah, mostly." Mike's eyes stayed on the monitor. The woman had pressed herself against the wall, as if trying to disappear into it. The child, he could see now it was a boy, hadn't moved or fidgeted once. No normal kid stood that still. "You heading home soon?" Tommy asked, following Mike's gaze to the screen. "Something wrong out there?" Mike made a decision. "Actually, Tommy, could you cover the counter for a few minutes? Think I saw something that needs checking." Tommy's eyebrows rose, but he nodded. In 15 years of night shifts, Mike had never asked for an unscheduled break. The rain had picked up when Mike stepped outside, carrying the umbrella he kept behind the counter. He approached the dumpster slowly, making his footsteps deliberately loud on the wet pavement. "Hello?" he called softly. "I'm not here to cause trouble. Just wanted to check if you're okay." Silence. Then a small whimper, quickly hushed. Mike stayed where he was, remembering how he'd approached injured animals on his grandfather's farm. "I've got an umbrella," he offered, "and there's hot coffee inside." No questions asked. More silence. Then, barely audible over the rain, "We're fine. Please, just go away." The voice was young, female, and trying desperately to sound stronger than it was. Mike's chest tightened as he caught a glimpse of her face in the security light. One eye swollen nearly shut, a dark bruise blooming across her cheek. "I'm Mike," he said quietly. "I work here. My daughter's 8, makes me keep Band-Aids and first aid supplies around. Got some ice packs, too." The boy shifted slightly, pressing closer to the woman. He looked about Sarah's age, but where Sarah filled any silence with chatter, this child seemed wrapped in it like a shield. Mike's phone buzzed in his pocket. Sarah, probably wondering why he hadn't responded to her text. The woman flinched at the sound. "Look," Mike said, "I've got about 6 hours left on my shift. There's a break room in back with a couch. No one uses it this time of night. You could rest, get warm, wait out the storm. No strings attached." The woman's uninjured eye studied him, desperation warring with distrust. The boy tugged at her sleeve, whispered something Mike couldn't hear. Finally she straightened slightly, wincing at the movement. Just until the storm passes," she said. Mike nodded, careful to maintain his distance as they emerged from behind the dumpster. In the better lighting, he could see more bruises peeking from beneath her collar. The boy's clothes were clean but worn, his small hand never leaving the woman's. "I'm Emma," she offered, so quietly he almost missed it. "This is Jamie." Jamie didn't look up, but his grip on Emma's hand tightened as they followed Mike toward the store's back entrance. None of them noticed the black sedan that drove slowly past the station, its tinted windows reflecting the storm. The porch light cast weak shadows across Mike's front yard as he pulled into the driveway, his old truck's headlights illuminating Mrs. Chen's silhouette on the front steps. Emma and Jamie remained silent in the back seat, where they'd huddled. For the entire drive, in the rearview mirror, Mike caught glimpses of Emma's hand, absently touching a broken gold chain around her neck, her fingers working the clasp like worry beads. "That's Mrs. Chen," Mike explained softly. "She looks after Sarah when I work nights." He watched Emma's reflection tense. "She's good people. Known her most of my life." The elderly woman approached the truck, concern creasing her face. "Michael?" Sarah was worried. "You never miss saying good night." "Sorry about that." Mike stepped out into the drizzling rain. "Had an emergency at the station. Mrs. Chen, these are some folks who need a place to stay tonight. This is Emma and Jamie." Mrs. Chen's eyes took in Emma's injuries without comment, but her expression softened when she spotted Jamie. Something in her posture shifted, the same way it had when Clara was sick, that mixture of determination and gentle strength that had helped them all survive those final months. "I made too much soup," she said matter-of-factly. "Good thing you brought hungry people to help eat it." Emma emerged slowly from the truck, keeping Jamie partially behind her. The boy's eyes darted everywhere, taking in the small house, the weather-worn yard toys, the dim lights behind curtained windows. His grip on Emma's hand never wavered. "Sarah is sleeping," Mrs. Chen continued, as if taking in strangers at midnight was perfectly normal. "But soup stays hot on stove. Come, come, rain is no good for healing." Inside, the house was quiet, except for the gentle hum of the aging heating system. Crayon drawings covered the refrigerator, and a half-completed puzzle sprawled across the coffee table. Emma's eyes lingered on a photo of Sarah and Mike at what looked like a school science fair, their matching grins bright under a hand-lettered sign about plant growth. "Bathroom's down the hall if you want to clean up," Mike offered. "I can find some clean towels, maybe some of Clara's old clothes that might fit." Emma's uninjured eye widened. "Clara? My late wife." Mike gestured to another photo on the wall, this one showing a laughing woman with Sarah's red curls. She passed 3 years ago. Cancer. Something in Emma's posture relaxed slightly at this information, though Mike wasn't sure why. She glanced at Jamie, who had pressed himself against her side, his small face nearly hidden in her jacket. "It's okay, sweetheart," she whispered. "We can get cleaned up." Mrs. Chen was already moving efficiently through the kitchen, ladling soup into bowls. "Food first," she insisted, "then clean, both too thin." Jamie's head lifted slightly at the smell of chicken soup, and for the first time Mike saw a flicker of something other than fear in the boy's eyes. He looked younger, suddenly, more like the child he should be. "Sarah made dumplings," Mike said, pulling out a kitchen chair. "She's been practicing all week, not quite ready for a restaurant, but they're getting better." A ghost of a smile touched Jamie's lips. Emma noticed it too, her hand gently squeezing his shoulder. "Maybe we could try one," she suggested softly. "It would be rude not to taste them, right?" They ate quietly, Emma wincing occasionally as the spoon touched her split lip. Jamie methodically picked apart a dumpling, examining its contents with careful curiosity before taking the smallest of bites. Mrs. Chen puttered around the kitchen, somehow always managing to refill bowls without seeming to pay attention to them at all. "I'll make up the spare room," Mike said when the bowls were finally empty. "It's small, but the bed's comfortable." "We couldn't," Emma started, but Mrs. Chen cut her off. "Too late to go anywhere else," she stated firmly. "Rain getting worse. Streets not safe." She fixed Emma with a knowing look. "Sometimes accepting help is brave thing to do." Emma's hand went to the broken necklace again, twisting it nervously. The gold chain caught the kitchen light, revealing an intricate pattern of leaves and what might have been a family crest, now partially obscured by damage. "Just for tonight," Emma whispered, though whether she was reassuring them or herself wasn't clear. "We'll figure something out tomorrow." Mike nodded, not pushing. "Sarah's a deep sleeper, but she's an early riser. And curious. Fair warning." Another ghost smile flickered across Emma's face. Jamie used to be like that, curious about everything. It was the first personal detail she'd offered, and Mike noted the past tense with a pang. What had happened to turn a curious child into this silent shadow? Upstairs, the old house creaked its familiar lullaby as Mrs. Chen helped Emma find clothes and first aid supplies. Mike made up the spare bed with fresh sheets, trying not to notice how Jamie positioned himself to keep all doorways in view, or how his small hands shook as he accepted the borrowed pajamas. Some questions, Mike decided, were better left for morning. Sarah's voice carried up the stairs shortly after dawn, her excitement cutting through the morning quiet. "Daddy, there's a boy sleeping in the guest room." Mike, who dozed fitfully in his armchair, jerked awake. He'd meant to warn Sarah before. She discovered their guests, but exhaustion had finally claimed him somewhere around sunrise. Now he could hear her footsteps pattering back down the hallway, followed by a muffled thump and a sharp intake of breath. "Hello? Are you okay?" Sarah's voice again, now tinged with worry. Mike was up the stairs in seconds. The guest room door stood open, revealing Emma crumpled on the floor beside the bed, her face ashen. Jamie knelt beside her, small hands fluttering helplessly over her shoulder. Emma. The bruise on her face had darkened overnight, but that wasn't what caught Mike's attention. Her shirt had ridden up, revealing angry purple marks across her ribs, the kind of injuries that needed medical attention. "Sarah, go call Mrs. Chen. But now, please." Emma's eyes fluttered open, unfocused. "Jamie," she whispered, "take Jamie and run." "Nobody's running," Mike said firmly, kneeling beside her. "But you need a doctor. No hospitals." Emma tried to sit up, gasping at the movement. "They'll find us, please." Jamie made a soft, distressed sound, the first noise Mike had heard from him. The boy's eyes were wide with panic, darting between Emma and the door like a trapped animal. "My friend Marcus is a doctor," Mike said, keeping his voice steady. "Works at the clinic. He does house calls, no questions asked." "Let me call him." Emma's breath came in short gasps. Can't trust Emma." Mike waited until her eyes focused on him. "You're hurt worse than you're letting on. Whatever you're running from, it won't matter if you don't get help. Let me call Marcus." A tear slid down Jamie's cheek. His small hand found Emma's, squeezing tight. Something in that gesture seemed to decide her. "Okay," she whispered, "but please, don't let them take him." Mike nodded, already dialing. Marcus answered on the second ring, voice thick with sleep. "Someone better be dying, Thompson." "Need a favor, Mark. House call. Off the books." A pause. "Bad? Could be. 20 minutes. Put on coffee." Sarah hovered in the doorway as Mike helped Emma back onto the bed. "Is she going to be okay, Daddy?" "Course she is, Pumpkin. Hey, why don't you show Jamie where we keep the cereal? Get some breakfast started?" Jamie looked to Emma, who managed a weak nod. "Go on, sweetheart. I'm just tired." Sarah approached, carefully holding out her hand. "We have Cheerios," she offered. "Daddy just bought them yesterday." Jamie stared at her hand for a long moment before taking it, his movements hesitant as if he'd forgotten how to accept such simple gestures. Sarah led him downstairs, her voice drifting back as she chatted about her favorite breakfast combinations. Mrs. Chen arrived before Marcus, armed with herbal tea and quiet determination. She took one look at Emma and began muttering in Mandarin, her experienced hands already checking for fever. Marcus showed up exactly 20 minutes after the call, medical bag in hand and yesterday's stubble on his chin. His eyes narrowed at Emma's visible injuries, but he kept his voice professionally neutral. "I'm Dr. Marcus Webb. Mind if I take a look?" Emma's examination revealed 3 cracked ribs, severe bruising, and possible internal bleeding. Marcus's expression grew grimmer with each discovery. When he lifted Emma's hair to check a head wound, his fingers brushed her neck, dislodging the broken necklace. It fell to the bed, its intricate golden leaves catching the morning light. Marcus went, very still. "This is a Rothschild piece," he said quietly. "My wife's family jewelers made these for generations. Only a handful exist." Emma's good eye widened in panic. Her hand clutched the necklace, but the damage was done. In the sudden silence, they could hear the television downstairs, where Sarah was probably showing Jamie her favorite cartoons. "That's why you ran," Mike realized. "The boy, he's James Rothschild III, a new voice said from the doorway. Officer Linda Martinez stood with her hand on her gun, though it remained holstered. "Missing heir to the Rothschild fortune. There's a national alert out for both of you." Emma tried to rise, but Marcus held her down with gentle pressure on her shoulder. "You'll tear your stitches," he warned. "How did you—" Mike began. "Tommy called me," Linda said. "Said you took in some strays last night, wanted me to check it out, make sure everything was okay." Her eyes moved to Emma's injuries. "Guess he was right to be concerned." "Please," Emma whispered. "You don't understand. His father beat you?" Linda's voice softened. "Yeah, I can see that. But kidnapping a billionaire's son isn't the answer." "I didn't kidnap him." Emma's words came faster now, desperate. "I was his nanny. I watched that man hurt him for 2 years. The courts wouldn't listen. His mother was dead. No other family stepped in. When I found Jamie in the wine cellar that night, locked in, bleeding," she choked on a sob. "I couldn't leave him there. I couldn't." Downstairs, Jamie laughed at something Sarah said. The sound was startling in its normalcy, its innocence. Linda's hand dropped from her gun. "You have proof?" Emma's fingers worked the broken necklace clasp. The pendant opened with a tiny click, revealing a micro SD card hidden inside. 2 years of videos, photos, hospital reports covered up with bribes. I tried to do it legally first, but Richard Rothschild owns judges the way he owns everything else. Mike thought of Jamie's unnatural stillness, his silence, the way he flinched at sudden movements, thought of Sarah's laughter drifting up the stairs, and how Jamie's own laugh had sounded like something newly remembered. Linda pulled out her phone, then paused. "You know what this means? As soon as I report this, every news outlet in the country will be here. The boy's grandfather has offered a $5 million reward." "Theodore Rothschild?" Emma's face showed a flicker of hope. "He's looking for Jamie? Been on every major network for months, saying his grandson was kidnapped by a mentally unstable employee." Linda's eyes narrowed, "though I'm guessing that's not quite accurate." "Theo never knew," Emma whispered. "Richard kept him away, said Jamie was at private schools in Europe. I tried to reach out once, but the letters never got through." Marcus finished bandaging Emma's ribs, his movements gentle but efficient. "That evidence needs to get to the FBI," he said quietly. "And she needs a hospital, Linda, real medical documentation of these injuries." Mike looked at Mrs. Chen, who had been silent throughout the revelations. She met his eyes with a slight nod. "I'm coming with you," Mike said. "To the hospital, to the station, wherever. Sarah and Jamie can stay with Mrs. Chen until we sort this out." "Michael," Emma started. "You trusted me last night," he cut in. "Trust me now. Nobody's taking that boy anywhere until we know he's safe. Right, Linda?" The police officer sighed, but there was a determined set to her jaw. "Let me call in some favors. Get the FBI here before the media circus starts." She looked at Emma. "But first, you're going to tell me everything, and I mean everything." As if on cue, another laugh floated up from downstairs, Jamie again, sounding younger, lighter. Like a child remembering how to be a child. Emma closed her eyes, tears sliding down her cheeks. "He laughed," she whispered. "I haven't heard him laugh in so long." Mike thought of his wallet, of Sarah's school photo behind the plastic window. Of all the ways love made people brave, made them fight impossible odds. "Tell them everything," he said softly. "We'll figure out the rest together." Mrs. Chen's house smelled of ginger and garlic, the familiar scents wrapping around the children like a protective blanket. Sarah sat cross-legged on the worn carpet, carefully showing Jamie how to feed Mrs. Chen's ancient goldfish, Princess. The fish's orange scales gleamed as it rose to nibble food from Jamie's trembling fingers. "See, just a tiny pinch," Sarah demonstrated. "Mrs. Chen says Princess is 50 years old, but Daddy thinks she's joking." Jamie's eyes followed the fish's lazy circles. "We had koi," he whispered, so quietly Sarah had to lean in to hear, "in the big pond. But they disappeared after—" He trailed off, his hand dropping from the fish tank. Mrs. Chen appeared with a plate of almond cookies, her movements deliberately unhurried. "Ah, Princess likes you," she observed. "Very picky fish, only takes food from good hearts." A ghost of a smile touched Jamie's lips. Since Emma had left for the hospital yesterday, these small expressions had begun appearing more frequently, tiny cracks in his careful armor of silence. "When's Daddy coming back?" Sarah asked, accepting a cookie. She'd been asking variations of this question every few hours, trying to understand why she couldn't go home, why they were having an unexpected sleepover at Mrs. Chen's. "Soon," Mrs. Chen promised, the same answer she'd given each time. "Important. Things take time, like making good dumplings, yes?" Sarah nodded sagely, already well-versed in the dumpling philosophy of patience. She broke her cookie in half, offering the larger portion to Jamie. The boy stared at it for a long moment before accepting, his fingers brushing hers with the lightest of touches. Outside, Officer Martinez's patrol car remained parked across the street, its presence both reassuring and a reminder of why they were here. Linda had arranged for 2 officers to watch the house in rotating shifts, their unmarked vehicles the only sign that anything unusual was happening in the quiet neighborhood. Mrs. Chen kept the children busy with small tasks, feeding Princess, folding origami cranes, measuring rice for dinner. She understood, better than most, how work could be a shelter from worry. Each time Jamie completed a task, his movements grew slightly more certain, as if remembering what it felt like to exist without fear. "Would you like to help in garden?" she asked as the afternoon sun began to fade. "Chickens need feeding. Very important job." Jamie's head lifted at the mention of chickens. "You have chickens?" "6 ladies, very spoiled," Mrs. Chen confirmed. "Sarah knows their names." "Ruby's my favorite," Sarah announced, already heading for the back door. "She lets me pet her sometimes. Come on, I'll show you." Jamie followed, his steps quickening slightly as they reached the garden. The chicken coop stood in the corner, its wooden walls weathered but solid. Sarah demonstrated how to scatter the feed, making soft clucking noises to attract the hens. "Like this," she encouraged, taking Jamie's hand and helping him toss a handful of feed. The chickens bustled around their feet, pecking at the scattered grain. A warm brown hen, Ruby, ventured closer, tilting her head to study Jamie with one bright eye. "She likes you," Sarah exclaimed as Ruby pecked delicately at the feed near Jamie's shoes. Jamie stood very still, watching the chicken with a mix of wonder and uncertainty. Then, slowly, he crouched down to Ruby's level. The hen clucked softly, stepping closer to investigate his shoelaces. "Hello," he whispered to the chicken, and Mrs. Chen, watching from the kitchen window, saw something shift in his small face. A softening, a moment of pure, childlike connection, untainted by memory. Later, as she served rice and stir-fried vegetables for dinner, Jamie presented her with a carefully folded paper crane. Its wings were slightly uneven, but he'd worked on it for nearly an hour, his face set in concentration. "For luck," he said, quietly placing it beside his plate. "Emma says cranes bring luck." Mrs. Chen picked up the crane with gentle fingers, turning it to catch the light. "Very good luck," she agreed, "especially when made with care." Sarah beamed at Jamie across the table. "Maybe we can make one for Emma too." "And Daddy?" Jamie nodded, some of the tension easing from his shoulders. He'd drawn a picture earlier, his first since arriving, showing 4 figures feeding chickens together. The crayon lines were shaky, but the meaning was clear. A family, whole and safe. Mrs. Chen hung both the crane and the drawing on her refrigerator, right next to Sarah's school awards and finger paintings. Sometimes she knew the bravest thing was to make space for hope to grow. The hospital room was too bright, too sterile, its fluorescent lights throwing harsh shadows across Emma's bruised face. Mike sat in the visitor's chair, watching her stare at an old photograph she'd finally allowed herself to remove from her worn backpack. In it, a much younger Emma held a baby Jamie, both of them caught in a moment of pure joy, unaware of the shadows gathering around them. "I was 22, Emma said quietly, her fingers tracing the photo's creased edge. Fresh out of college, desperate for work. The Rothschild nanny position seemed like a miracle. Private suite in the mansion, excellent pay, just one child to care for. She smiled bitterly. Should have known it was too good to be true. Mike waited, sensing she needed to tell this story at her own pace. Outside the room, 2 FBI agents stood guard, their presence a reminder of both protection and imprisonment. Jamie's mother died when he was 3 months old. Car accident, or at least that's what the papers said. Richard, he changed after that, started drinking more. The staff whispered about his temper, but nobody dared say anything openly. You don't cross a Rothschild, not if you want to work in New York again. She shifted in the hospital bed, wincing at the movement. The first time I saw him hit Jamie, the boy was barely 2. A glass of milk spilled at breakfast. I tried to intervene, got fired on the spot. But Jamie, her voice cracked, he screamed for me all day, wouldn't stop. Richard hired me back that evening, but things were different after that. He made sure I knew my place. Mike thought of his daughter's easy laughter, her unquestioning trust in his love. Why didn't you report it? I did. 3 times. Emma's laugh held no humor. The first detective mysteriously got transferred to Alaska. The second had his pension threatened. The third, she shuddered. Let's just say Richard's message was clear. The only proof I had was my word against his, and a Rothschild's word is worth more than gold in this country. A nurse passed by the room, checking their status through the window before moving on. The FBI had cleared all non-essential personnel from this floor, but the hospital still hummed with its usual rhythm of life and death. I started documenting everything, Emma continued. Hidden cameras, voice recordings, photographs of injuries. Jamie got so good at hiding the bruises, wearing long sleeves even in summer, he stopped speaking almost entirely by age 5. The therapist Richard hired said it was trauma from his mother's death. She clenched the photograph tighter, as if he didn't know the real reason. And his grandfather, Theodore? Richard kept them apart, said Jamie was too fragile for visitors, needed strict routine. The few times Theo did visit, everything was perfectly staged. Jamie was heavily medicated, barely aware. Richard called it anxiety medication. I called it what it was, abuse. A sound at the door made them both start, but it was just Linda carrying 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to Mike before settling into the other chair. FBI's finished their preliminary review of your evidence, she said quietly. They're moving Jamie to a safe house tomorrow. You'll both be under federal protection until the grand jury convenes. Emma's face paled. He can't be alone. He doesn't do well with strangers, especially men. He needs you, Linda finished. I know. They know. But right now, you both need to be safe. Richard Rothschild's private jet landed at Newark 2 hours ago. Mike felt his chest tighten. He knows? Not everything, but he knows Jamie's been found. He's already giving interviews, playing the desperate father searching for his kidnapped son. Linda's voice hardened. Talking about pressing charges against the mentally unstable nanny who took him. Emma clutched the photo like a lifeline. He'll try to get to Jamie first. He has people everywhere. Money opens any door. Not this one, Mike said firmly. Linda, what if they stayed at my place? The FBI can watch the house, and with Mrs. Chen next door. It's too risky, Linda started, but Emma cut her off. Actually, it might be perfect. Her good eye gleamed with sudden purpose. Richard would never expect that. He'll be watching. Hotels, safe houses, looking for obvious protection details. A small house in a nowhere town, with a single dad and his daughter. She shook her head. It wouldn't even cross his mind. Linda frowned. You're asking Mike to put his family at risk. No, Mike said quietly. She's asking me to help protect hers. The first week of their new arrangement settled into an uneasy rhythm. FBI agents rotated shifts in unmarked cars, maintaining a subtle presence that nonetheless drew curious glances from neighbors. Inside Mike's house, life adjusted around new routines, careful steps in a dance of healing and trust. Sarah's homework assignment lay open on the kitchen table. My new brother. Her childish handwriting filled the page with observations both profound and innocent. Jamie likes scrambled eggs, but not when they're too yellow. He helps me feed the chickens at Mrs. Chen's house. Sometimes he doesn't talk all day, but that's okay, because his eyes say things instead. Dad says families come in all different ways, and sometimes the best ones find each other by accident. Emma, reading over Sarah's shoulder during breakfast, had to blink back tears. Her ribs were healing, the bruises fading to yellowed shadows, but some wounds went deeper than skin. Is it okay? Sarah asked, watching Emma's face. My teacher said we should write about important changes in our lives. It's beautiful, sweetheart. Emma's voice wavered slightly. But maybe we should ask Jamie if he's comfortable with you sharing it in class. Jamie, who had been quietly arranging his toast into precise geometric patterns, looked up at the sound of his name. A week of regular meals had begun to fill out his hollow cheeks, though he still startled at unexpected noises. Would you mind? Sarah asked him directly. I can write about something else if you want. Jamie studied her for a long moment, then shook his head. I don't mind, he whispered. His voice, when it came, was stronger than it had been at the gas station. Can I read it first? Sarah beamed, sliding the paper toward him. Sure. Maybe you can help me fix my spelling. Mrs. Rodriguez says I mix up too many letters. Mike, watching from the doorway, caught Emma's eye. These small moments of normalcy felt like victories. Jamie speaking unprompted. Sarah's easy acceptance of their new reality, the way Emma's shoulders gradually lost their defensive hunch when she was within the house's walls. The FBI had installed new security systems, reinforced locks, panic buttons disguised as light switches. But somehow, the greatest protection seemed to come from these ordinary morning rhythms, breakfast conversations, homework help, the gentle clinking of spoons against cereal bowls. Dad? Sarah's voice pulled him from his thoughts. Can Jamie come to my science fair next week? I'm doing an experiment with Mrs. Chen's chickens, and he helped collect all the eggs. Mike glanced at Emma, who tensed slightly. They hadn't risked any public outings yet, aware that Richard's influence reached far and deep. But the school was small, security was tight, and Jamie's eyes had lit up at the mention of the project he'd been helping with. Maybe, Mike said carefully. We'll talk to Linda about it, see what she thinks. The media coverage is dying down, Emma offered quietly. And they're still focused on the New York area, watching Richard's mansion and Theo's properties. As if summoned by the mention of coverage, the burner phone the FBI had provided buzzed in Emma's pocket. She checked it, her face tightening. Theo's giving another interview tonight. Linda says he's offering to double the reward. Jamie's toast geometry collapsed under suddenly trembling fingers. Sarah reached over without comment, helping him rebuild the pattern. We could make it a triangle this time, she suggested, like the pyramid we learned about in history. The simple distraction worked. Jamie's hands steadied as he focused on the new design, though his shoulders remained tense. Emma watched them work together, her expression a complex mix of gratitude and guilt. He misses his grandfather, she said later, after the children had gone upstairs to get ready for their remote learning sessions. Theo was always kind when he visited, brought Jamie books about architecture and engineering. He trusted his son too much, believed Richard's excuses. Mike refilled their coffee cups, a gesture that had become comfortingly familiar. The FBI says Theo's been cooperative with the investigation. Once they show him the evidence, I know. Emma wrapped her hands around the warm mug. I just hope. Jamie's had so many people fail him. His father, the police, even his grandfather in a way. I don't want him to lose faith in everyone. From upstairs came the sound of laughter. Sarah's bright giggle and, increasingly often, Jamie's softer chuckle. They were probably setting up their laptops side by side, as they'd taken to doing during their virtual classes. Sarah had appointed herself Jamie's unofficial study partner, helping him catch up on the schoolwork he'd missed during months of running. I don't think we have to worry about that, Mike said, smiling at the sounds of children simply being children. Some kinds of faith build themselves, one small trust at a time. The threatening letter appeared on a Tuesday morning, tucked under the windshield wiper of Mike's truck. Plain white envelope, expensive paper, no return address. Inside, the message was equally simple. A father has rights. How much is your silence worth? Mike found it during his morning routine check of the property, a habit he'd developed. Since Emma and Jamie had moved in, the FBI agent parked across the street was already radioing it in, but Mike's hands shook as he sealed the letter in a plastic bag. Not from fear, but from a rage he hadn't felt since Clara's final days in the hospital, when the insurance company had denied her last treatment option. Don't tell Emma, he instructed Linda when she arrived to collect the evidence. She's just starting to sleep through the night. Linda's expression was grim. Mike, we've got a bigger problem. A private investigator tried to access Sarah's school records yesterday, claimed to be conducting a district audit. The implications hit him like a physical blow. They'd known Richard had resources, but targeting Sarah? Did they? School. Called me first, thank God. But Mike, Linda hesitated. He's escalating. These aren't random attempts anymore. He's figured out where Jamie is, or he's close to it. Inside the house, they could hear Mrs. Chen teaching Sarah and Jamie how to make dumplings, her calm voice carrying instructions about proper pleating technique. The domestic sounds felt suddenly fragile, like a soap bubble about to burst. We should move them, Mike said. But even as he spoke, he knew it wasn't that simple. Jamie had finally stopped checking exit routes every time he entered a room. Emma had hung a small painting in the guest room, her first claim to permanence. And Sarah would be devastated. Linda shook her head. Visibility is actually working in our favor right now. The media attention on Richard means his every move is being watched. If Jamie suddenly disappears again, he'll spin it as Emma running, use it to support his kidnapping narrative. Mike ran a hand through his hair. So what do? We let him make mistakes. Linda's voice hardened. Men like Richard Rothschild aren't used to being told no. The more pressure we put on him, the more likely he is to slip up. A crash from the kitchen interrupted them, followed by Jamie's sharp cry of distress. They rushed inside to find broken ceramic on the floor, a mixing bowl, now in pieces. Jamie had pressed himself into the corner, arms wrapped protectively around his middle, while Sarah hovered nearby with worried eyes. I'm sorry, he whispered, rocking slightly. I'm sorry. Only a bowl, Mrs. Chen said calmly, already sweeping up pieces. Many bowls in world, only one Jamie. But Jamie's breathing was coming too fast, his eyes unfocused. Emma, who had appeared from the living room, approached him slowly. Jamie, sweetheart, you're safe. Remember our game? Tell me 5 things you can see. Jamie's voice shook. B-bowl broke. He'll be mad. No, he won't, Sarah interrupted firmly. Nobody here gets mad about accidents. Remember when I spilled paint all over Dad's work shoes? He just helped me clean it up. Something in Jamie's posture shifted at Sarah's words. His breathing slowed slightly. 5 things, he mumbled. I see Mrs. Chen sweeping. Sarah's pink hair clips. The window with rain. Emma's green sweater. Mike's kind eyes. The last observation hung in the air, unexpected and powerful. Mike felt his throat tighten as Jamie gradually uncurled from his defensive position. "Know what else I see?" Sarah added, reaching for Jamie's hand. "Enough dumpling filling for at least 20 more tries, and Mrs. Chen always says practice makes perfect." Mrs. Chen nodded approvingly. "Smart girl, come, start again. This time I show special trick for folding corners." As the children returned to their cooking lesson, Emma touched Mike's arm. "There was a letter, wasn't there?" "I saw Linda's car." Mike hesitated, but Emma's eyes were steady. She wasn't the same frightened woman from the gas station. "Richard's getting closer," he admitted quietly. "But Linda has a plan." "He'll try to buy us off first," Emma said, "then threaten, then—" She swallowed hard. "Mike, I should go. Take Jamie somewhere else." "You and Sarah shouldn't—" "Family," Mrs. Chen interrupted from the kitchen, not turning from her dumpling demonstration. "Like good dumpling, needs all parts to work. Filling, wrapper, proper fold. Take one away, everything fall apart." The kitchen. Jamie was carefully pleating a dumpling edge, his face set in concentration. Sarah counted the folds out loud, cheering when he achieved a perfect crimp. The scene was so ordinary, so precious in its simplicity. "We stay together," Mike said firmly. "Whatever comes next, we face it as a family." The DNA test results lay stark and official on Mike's kitchen table, their clinical language confirming what they already knew. Jamie's genetic profile matched the samples provided by Theodore Rothschild with 99.9% certainty. The boy coloring quietly with Sarah in the next room was, without question, the lost heir to one of America's largest fortunes. Emma traced the edges of the paper with trembling fingers. "I remember the day they did the original test," she said, quietly. "Jamie was just a baby. Catherine, his mother, she'd been asking questions about Richard's behavior, threatening to leave. The paternity test was his way of reminding her who held the power." Mike poured more coffee, adding the extra sugar Emma preferred. The kitchen had become their war room after the children's bedtime, a place to share secrets and strategies. "Tell me about Catherine," he prompted gently. Emma's eyes grew distant. She was radiant, brilliant too, had degrees in architecture and urban planning. She designed homeless shelters, affordable housing projects. Richard met her at a charity gala, pursued her for months. She smiled bitterly. The papers called it a fairy tale romance, the billionaire and the humanitarian. What changed? Catherine got pregnant. Richard, he'd hidden his drinking well during courtship, but once they were married, once she was carrying his heir. Emma's hands clenched around her coffee mug. "The first time he hit her, she was 7 months pregnant. She called me in the middle of the night, terrified. I was just the nanny candidate then, hadn't even started the job. But I drove to the mansion anyway." Linda entered quietly, taking her usual seat at the table. She'd been working late, coordinating with FBI agents as they built their case against Richard. "She didn't press charges," Emma continued. "Richard's lawyers drew up post-nuptial agreements, threatened to destroy her reputation, her projects. She stayed for Jamie's sake, thinking she could protect him." Her voice cracked. "The night of the accident, she'd finally decided to run. Had everything planned, but somehow Richard found out." And Mike felt a chill despite the warm kitchen. "The car crash." Emma nodded. "Brake lines cut, so clean, so professional that even the best investigators couldn't prove it wasn't an accident. I found the receipt later. Private investigator, security expert, same one who's probably watching us now." Linda pulled out her notebook. "Name? Marcus Drake. Ex-military, specializes in difficult family situations for wealthy clients." Emma's laugh held no humor. "Richard kept him on retainer after Catherine's death, said it was for household security." "The FBI's been wanting to talk to Drake for weeks," Linda said. "Man's like smoke, everywhere and nowhere." A floorboard creaked upstairs. Sarah's usual midnight trip to the bathroom. They waited until her quiet footsteps returned to her room before continuing. "After Catherine died, Richard started drinking more openly," Emma said. No one left to keep appearances. 4. Except at public functions. Jamie was just a baby, colicky, needed constant attention. Richard, he couldn't stand the crying. She pulled out her phone, scrolling through encrypted files. I started documenting everything the day Catherine died. Knew I'd need proof someday. She handed the phone to Linda. That's from when Jamie was 2, first broken arm. Richard told the hospital he fell down the stairs. The photos were clinical, devastating in their detail. Mike had to look away. Why didn't Theodore intervene? Linda asked. Surely he suspected something. Richard controlled all access to Jamie, said the boy was delicate, needed special care. When Theo visited, Jamie was always heavily medicated, barely conscious. Richard claimed it was for anxiety, trauma from losing his mother. Emma's voice hardened. The few times Jamie tried to tell his grandfather the truth, Richard would double the dosage, say the boy was having episodes. Mike thought of Jamie. Upstairs, finally sleeping peacefully after weeks of nightmares. But you kept gathering evidence. Catherine made me promise. Emma pulled out an old flash drive, its surface scratched and worn. The night she died, she gave me this. Said if anything happened to her, I had to protect Jamie. Had to find a way to get him to Theo. She pressed the drive into Linda's hands. Everything's here. Financial records, medical reports, security footage. Catherine was building a case, preparing for custody battle. She just ran out of time. Linda pocketed the drive carefully. This helps, but we need more. Recent evidence, proof of ongoing abuse. Check the necklace again, Emma said. The SD card has everything from the last 2 years, including the night we ran. She closed her eyes. The night I found Jamie locked in the wine cellar, half conscious. He'd been drinking, lost control. If I hadn't gone back to the house for my forgotten phone, Mike reached across the table, squeezing her hand. You saved him. Maybe. Emma's voice was barely a whisper. But Richard won't stop until he gets him back. And next time there might not be anyone to find him in time. The television cast a blue glow across the living room as Theodore Rothschild's weathered face filled the screen. Unlike his son's polished media appearances, Theo looked genuinely haggard, his prestigious law firm's backdrop doing little to hide the toll of recent weeks. I'm speaking directly to Emma Sullivan now. His voice cracked with emotion. I know you thought you were protecting Jamie, but please, he's all I have left of Catherine. The reward has been doubled. $10 million. No questions asked. Just let me see my grandson. Jamie, watching from the doorway in his pajamas, made a small sound of distress. Sarah immediately took his hand, a gesture that had become instinctive over their weeks together. Grandpa looks sad, Jamie whispered. Emma muted the television. But the damage was done. The headlines scrolling across the bottom of the screen told their own story. Rothschild heir still missing, mentally unstable nanny suspected, father pleads for son's return. Mike watched Jamie's face carefully. They'd tried to shield the children from the media coverage, but in a small town, secrets had a way of spreading. Just yesterday, Sarah had come home from her remote learning session asking why her online classmates were saying Jamie was worth millions of dollars. Your grandfather loves you, Emma said softly. He just doesn't know the whole truth yet. Why can't we tell him? Jamie's voice was stronger than it had been in the gas station. Weeks of safety gradually rebuilding his confidence. He's smart. He'd understand. Linda, who had been reviewing security footage on her laptop, looked up. The FBI is building a solid case, Jamie, but your father has a lot of powerful friends. We need to make sure everything is properly documented before we move forward. But a sharp knock at the door cut him off. Everyone froze, but Mrs. Chen's familiar voice called out, "Aya, let old lady in before soup gets cold." Mike checked the security camera before opening the door. Mrs. Chen bustled in, carrying her largest soup pot, but her usual cheerful expression was strained. "Reporters at shop today," she announced, heading straight for the kitchen. "Ask many. Questions about strange car at my house, children in garden. I tell them mind own business, but..." She set the pot down with unusual force. "Not good. Too many eyes now." Emma's face paled. "We should leave. Find somewhere else." "No," Jamie said suddenly, his small voice firm. "I'm tired of running." They all turned to look at him. In the weeks since his arrival, Jamie had gradually emerged from his shell of silence, but this was different. He stood straighter, chin lifted in a way that suddenly recalled Catherine's photograph. "Mum kept running," he continued, "running and hiding and trying to make plans. And then," he swallowed hard, "and then she couldn't run anymore. I don't want anyone else to not be able to run anymore." Sarah squeezed his hand. "Nobody's going to hurt you here. Dad and Emma and Mrs. Chen and Officer Linda won't let them." "I know." Jamie looked at Emma. "That's why we should tell Grandpa. Everything. Show him the videos." Emma knelt before him, her eyes bright with tears. "Sweetheart, it's not that. Simple, your father's lawyers. Can't hide everything forever," Jamie finished. "You always said that's why you kept recording, so someday people would have to see the truth." Linda set aside her laptop. "He's right, you know. Richard's getting desperate. These public appeals, the increased reward. He's trying to control the narrative. But desperate people make mistakes." "And if he doesn't?" Emma challenged. "If he convinces Theo, the courts, everyone that I'm just a disturbed woman who kidnapped a child, then we fight," Mike said quietly. "Together, the way families do." Mrs. Chen, who had been silently ladling soup into bowls, spoke up. "Old Chinese saying truth like sunrise can hide behind clouds for a while, but always breaks through eventually." Jamie nodded solemnly, as if the proverb had confirmed something for him. "I want to make a video," he announced, "for Grandpa. Tell him everything I remember." The adults exchanged glances. Such a testimony would be powerful. The heir to the Rothschild fortune, speaking his truth, but the cost to Jamie, having to relive those memories. "Only if you're sure," Emma said finally, "and we stop the moment you want to stop." "I'm sure." Jamie's voice wavered but held firm. "Sarah can hold my hand, that makes things easier." Sarah beamed. "I'll squeeze once for courage, twice for extra courage, okay?" For the first time that evening, Jamie smiled. "Okay." As the children headed to the kitchen for Mrs. Chen's soup, Mike caught Emma's eye. They both knew this decision would change everything. Once Jamie's story went public, there would be no going back to the quiet life they'd built. But watching Jamie and Sarah chat over their soup bowls, seeing the way Jamie's shoulders had finally begun to relax in the warmth of their makeshift family, Mike knew they'd made the right choice. Sometimes the only way forward was through the storm. The security cameras at Tommy's Gas and Go had seen better days, but they captured everything that happened that rainy Tuesday evening in perfect, damning detail. Later, when the footage went viral, millions would watch the scene unfold. A wealthy man's mask of civility cracking to reveal the monster beneath. Mike hadn't expected to be working the evening shift, but Tommy had called in sick, and something about the timing felt wrong. He'd asked Linda to have an extra patrol car nearby, trusted his instincts honed by weeks of heightened vigilance. The black Mercedes appeared just after sunset, gliding to a stop at Pump 3. Mike recognized Richard Rothschild immediately. From the news coverage. Tall, distinguished, radiating the kind of confidence that came from never hearing the word no. But it was the man who emerged from the passenger side that made Mike's hand reach for the panic button. Marcus Drake, the security consultant Emma had warned them about. Mike pressed the silent alarm Linda had installed under the counter, then picked up the store phone as if making a routine call. "Hey, Mrs. Chen? Yeah, about that delivery." The code phrase they'd established weeks ago, warning her to get Emma and the children to the FBI safe room in her basement. Richard approached the counter, his smile practiced and cold. "Good evening. I believe you have something that belongs to me." "Just gas and snacks here, sir." Mike kept his voice neutral, years of customer service experience hiding his racing heart. "Regular or premium? Let's not play games." Richard's smile thinned. "My investigators are quite thorough, Mr. Thompson. Single father, foreclosure barely avoided last year. Daughter in need of braces soon. He placed a thick envelope on the counter. Life is expensive. Children deserve the best opportunities. Mike didn't touch the envelope. We're not that kind of establishment. Everyone has a price. Richard's voice hardened. Walk away now, deny everything, and this could be just the beginning. College fund for your daughter. Better job opportunities. The right doors opened. Or Mike could see Drake moving to block the store's entrance, his jacket bulging suspiciously. Or things become unfortunate. Richard's mask slipped slightly. Accidents happen, especially in small towns with understaffed police departments. The threat hung in the air, but Mike felt oddly calm, like Catherine's accident. Richard's composure cracked just for a moment. You know nothing about the wine cellar, though, Mike continued quietly. That was new, locking a child in the dark, beating him unconscious. Did that make you feel powerful? You have no proof. Actually, Linda's voice cut through the tension as she emerged from the storeroom, weapon drawn. We have quite a lot of proof. Drake reached for his gun, but 2 FBI agents already had him covered from the window. Outside, emergency lights began flashing as hidden vehicles moved into position. Your son remembers everything, Mike said, watching Richard's face contort. Every beating, every accident, every time you drugged him before his grandfather visited. Emma didn't just run with evidence, Richard. She ran with witness testimony. That disturbed woman manipulated. This disturbed woman, Emma's voice rang out from the doorway. Made sure to record everything. She held up her phone, where video was already playing. Richard's drunken rage, Jamie's screams, the wine cellar door slamming. Turn up the volume, Richard. Listen to your son. Beg you to stop. Richard lunged for her, mask completely shattered. You bitch! Mike vaulted the counter, but Linda was faster. Richard hit the ground hard, handcuffs clicking into place as his face pressed against the linoleum. Richard Rothschild, Linda recited. You're under arrest for child abuse, conspiracy, to commit murder, witness tampering. I'll ruin you all? Richard spat, struggling against the restraints. Do you have any idea who I am? The judges I know, the senators who owe me, the ones on these recordings. Emma's voice was steel, discussing Catherine's murder, planning custody arrangements, ordering prescription drugs for your anxious son. She knelt where Richard could see her. I learned from Catherine's mistake. She kept her evidence in one place, easy to find and destroy. I scattered copies everywhere, encrypted dead man switches that would activate if anything happened to me. Or Jamie. Richard's face went slack with realization. Outside, more vehicles were arriving, news vans drawn by police scanner chatter. Through the window, camera flashes began to strobe. Your father's watching all of this live, Linda informed him, hauling him to his feet. FBI agents are with him now, showing him everything. The videos, the medical reports, the financial trails. Did you really think you could hide it forever? My son, Richard snarled, straining against Linda's grip. He's my son, my heir. He's a little boy, Mike cut in, disgusted. A little boy who deserved a father, not a jailer. Emma's phone rang, the burner phone they used for secure communications. Her hands shook as she answered it, listened for a moment, then covered her mouth to hold back a sob. Theo wants to see him, she managed. He's asking Jamie's permission to visit, saying he'll understand if it's too soon, if Jamie needs time. Through the growing crowd outside, a familiar figure pushed through, Mrs. Chen, moving. With purposeful determination, she made it through the door just as Richard was being led out. Forgot soup on stove, she announced, as if armed FBI agents and handcuffed billionaires were perfectly normal occurrences at the gas station. Children doing homework. Jamie want to know if safe to come home now. Home. Such a simple word for such a profound concept. Yeah, Mike said, watching Richard being placed in a federal vehicle, Drake soon following. Yeah, I think it's finally safe. Emma sagged against the counter, years of tension releasing at once. I need to call Jamie, let him hear my voice. He always worries when... Already done? Mrs. Chen produced a tablet from her bag. Children very smart. Set up video call themselves. The tablet screen showed Sarah's bedroom, where both children sat surrounded by what appeared to be every stuffed animal in the house. Jamie's face was serious but calm as he took in the scene behind them. "Did you get him?" he asked quietly. Emma wiped her eyes. "Yes, sweetheart. He can't hurt you anymore." Jamie nodded solemnly. Is Grandpa really coming?" "Only if you want him to," Mike assured him. "Everything happens on your terms now, buddy." Sarah said. Jamie glanced at his friend, who gave him an encouraging nod. Sarah said maybe he could come for the science fair next week. See the chicken project? Through the tablet speakers, they could hear Sarah's excited gasp. "Yes, Mrs. Chen says the eggs are going to hatch any day now, and I wrote about how you helped with all the data collection and—" As Sarah chattered on, some of the remaining tension left Jamie's shoulders. He wasn't smiling, not quite, but there was something lighter in his eyes. "The media's going to be all over this," Linda warned quietly. "Might want to keep the kids home for a few days." Mrs. Chen sniffed. "Many dumplings to make, many stories to tell. Time passed quick with family. Mike looked around at their odd group, the police officer, the former nanny, the elderly neighbor, the gas station manager. On the tablet screen, two children who had found each other against all odds continued planning their science fair presentation, as if Billionaire arrests were just another Tuesday evening. "Come on," he said finally. "Let's go home. Mrs. Chen's soup is getting cold." Outside, camera flashes continued to light up the night, but inside their small house, warmth and healing waited. And for tonight, that was more than enough. The morning after Richard's arrest, Mike's kitchen table disappeared under a sea of legal documents, custody applications, witness statements, psychiatric evaluations. Each form another brick in the wall they were building between Jamie and his father. Catherine Reeves, a family court attorney Linda had recommended, spread out color-coded folders with methodical precision. Theodore Rothschild's lawyers have already filed for emergency temporary guardianship, Catherine explained. Her grey hair swept back in a no-nonsense bun. But given the circumstances, they're willing to consider a joint arrangement. Emma's hand found Jamie's shoulder as the boy studied the papers with unusual intensity. "What exactly does that mean?" "It means," Catherine said gently, "that everyone's priority is Jamie's well-being. Theo's been—" She paused, choosing her words carefully, devastated by the evidence. "He wants to make things right, but not at Jamie's expense." Jamie traced the edge of a custody form with one finger. Could I still stay here sometimes? With Emma and Mike and Sarah?" "That's what we're going to fight for," Catherine assured him. "Your grandfather specifically mentioned wanting to preserve the stable environment you found here." Through the window, they could see Sarah and Mrs. Chen in the garden, scattering feed for the chickens. The morning routine continued, despite the news vans still parked at the end of their street, kept at bay by FBI agents and local police. "Richard's lawyers will fight back," Catherine warned. "They'll try to paint Emma as unstable, question her motives in taking Jamie. They'll probe into everyone's background, Mike's financial struggles, his wife's death, every parking ticket and late payment." "Let them," Mike said firmly, signing another affidavit. "We have nothing to hide." Emma straightened in her chair. "Use my trust fund." "What?" Mike turned to her. "The trust fund Richard set up when I started as Jamie's nanny. I never touched it, felt too much like blood money. But now—" She met Catherine's eyes. "How much would a proper legal team cost? One that could match Richard's attorneys?" Catherine named a figure that made Mike wince, but Emma just nodded. "Do it. Time to use his own money against him." "I want to testify," Jamie said suddenly. Everyone fell silent, looking at him. "Not just the videos. I want to tell the judge myself." "Sweetheart," Emma started, but Jamie shook his head. "Sarah says brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing something even when you are scared." His small hands clenched into fists. "I'm scared all the time, but I'm more scared of him hurting someone else. Like," his voice cracked slightly, "like he hurt Mom." Catherine leaned forward. Your testimony would be powerful, Jamie, but only if you're absolutely sure. And we can prepare you for the kinds of questions they might ask. Sarah said she'd help me practice, Jamie offered. She's good at asking questions. Through the window, they could see Sarah demonstrating something to Mrs. Chen, her hands moving animatedly as she explained. The elderly woman nodded with exaggerated seriousness, treating the 8-year-old's chicken-feeding theories with grave respect. Speaking of Sarah, Catherine shifted some papers, we should discuss her role in all this. The media attention isn't going away anytime soon. She'll need preparation too, understanding of what she can and can't say at school, online safety, protocols. Mike felt a familiar twist of worry. Sarah had handled everything with remarkable resilience so far, but this was different. Their quiet life had been transformed overnight into national news. Sarah, strong girl, Mrs. Chen spoke up from the doorway, making them all jump. She carried a basket of fresh eggs, Sarah trailing behind her. Smart girl, knows important things about family. What kind of important things? Catherine asked, clearly familiar with the weight Mrs. Chen's opinions carried in this household. Know that love not about blood or money. Mrs. Chen set the egg basket down firmly. Know that family protect each other. Simple truth. Rest just details. Jamie's tense shoulders relaxed slightly at Mrs. Chen's words. Sarah bounded over to him, proudly showing off a perfectly formed egg. Look, Ruby finally laid one. I told you she was just waiting for the right time. The lawyers and their papers suddenly seemed less overwhelming in the face of such ordinary joy. Jamie carefully held the egg, some of the worried creases around his eyes smoothing as he focused on its warm brown shell. Good timing, he said, softly, and everyone heard the double meaning in his words. Catherine began gathering her files. I'll file these first thing tomorrow. The preliminary hearing is next week. Until then, try to maintain normal routines as much as possible. She smiled at Jamie, and maybe start practicing those testimony questions with Sarah. Don't forget science fair, Mrs. Chen reminded them. Life not stop for lawyers. Chickens still need feeding. Data still need collecting. Mike caught Emma's eye across the table and saw his own determination reflected there. One way or another they would make this work. For both children. For their whole unlikely family. Theodore Rothschild looked smaller in person than he did on television. Standing in Mike's modest living room, his expensive suit somehow out of place among the well-worn furniture and children's artwork, he seemed more like a tired old man than a corporate titan. His eyes fixed on Jamie with a mixture of hope and heartbreak. You've grown so much, he said softly. Last time I saw you, you were so still, so quiet. They told me it was the medication, that you needed it for anxiety. His voice cracked. I should have known, should have looked closer. Jamie stood between Emma and Sarah, one hand firmly clasped in each of theirs. He'd chosen this meeting, insisted he was ready, but his grip on their hands betrayed his nervousness. It's not your fault, Grandpa, he said, his voice small but steady. Dad, he was good at hiding things. Theo took a halting step forward, then stopped himself. The books I sent you about architecture engineering, did you ever... I read them all. Jamie's grip relaxed slightly. The one about bridges was my favorite. I used to imagine building one big enough to escape over. Something shattered in Theo's expression. He sank onto the couch, hands trembling. Oh, Jamie, my boy, I'm so sorry. Sarah squeezed Jamie's hand twice, their signal for extra courage. He squeezed back once before letting go, taking a careful step toward his grandfather. Want to see my science project? He asked. It's about egg production rates and chicken behavior. Sarah helped me with the graphs. Theo looked up, tears gleaming in his eyes. I'd love that. Sarah was already pulling out their presentation boards, eager to show off their work. We used different types of feed to see what made the chickens happiest, she explained. Jamie figured out how to measure their activity levels. Mathematical averages, Jamie added, some of his tension easing as he fell into the familiar topic. And we made charts showing the correlation between happy chickens and egg quality. Theo listened with complete attention as the children walked him through their methodology. His eyes never left Jamie's face, drinking in every expression, every gesture that showed his grandson's growing confidence. Emma moved to stand beside Mike, watching the scene unfold. "He's different than I expected," she whispered. "More human?" Mike supplied. On the coffee table, Mrs. Chen had laid out her almond cookies, her special recipe reserved for important occasions. Theo had accepted one with genuine gratitude, seeming to understand the honor it represented. "Did you really build this project yourself?" Theo asked, as Jamie explained their data collection system. Jamie nodded. "Mrs. Chen let us use her chicken coop, and Mike helped us make the graphs on his computer, and Emma checked our math." "Everyone helped," Sarah added proudly. "That's what families do." Theo's breath caught at the word families. He looked around the room, taking in the crayon drawings on the walls, the well-loved books stacked on shelves, the subtle signs of a home where children felt safe enough to leave their mark. "I've been meeting with my lawyers," he said carefully, "about the custody arrangements." Jamie tensed, but Sarah's hand found his again instantly. "I want—" Theo paused, choosing his words with obvious care. "I want you to have everything. You deserve, Jamie, the best education, opportunities, your rightful inheritance, but more than that, I want you to feel safe, loved." He glanced at Emma, then Mike. "You've found that here, haven't you?" Jamie nodded, pressing closer to Sarah. "Then perhaps," Theo continued, "we could discuss an arrangement, one that lets you have both worlds, your heritage, your future, and your family." "You mean—" Jamie's voice wavered. "I could stay here sometimes and visit you too, if that's what you want." Theo managed a shaky smile. "My house is very big, very empty, but it has an excellent workshop, perfect for building model bridges." Mrs. Chen, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. "Good bridge needs strong foundation, many pillars to hold weight." She looked pointedly around the room. "Many people to hold heart." Jamie's face lit with sudden understanding. "Like my science project, multiple variables working together for the best outcome." Theo laughed softly, a sound of surprise and delight. "Exactly like that. You really are your mother's son." He sobered quickly. "The custody hearing won't be easy. Your father's. Lawyers will face truth," Mrs. Chen said firmly. "Truth and love stronger than money. And numbers," Sarah added. "Our science project proves that having more support makes everything better. Even chickens." Jamie looked around the room, at Sarah's unwavering friendship, Emma's protective love, Mike's steady presence, Mrs. Chen's quiet wisdom, and now his grandfather's desperate hope for reconciliation. "I'm not afraid of the hearing," he said quietly. "Not anymore." He straightened his shoulders, looking more like Catherine than ever. "I have my data and my family, all of them." The family courtroom seemed impossibly large to Jamie as he sat in the witness chair, his feet barely touching the floor. He wore his best clothes, new ones Theo had bought him, but chosen by Emma with Sarah's careful input. "Blue makes you look brave," Sarah had insisted, and somehow wearing the color did help him feel stronger. Judge Marion Chen, no relation to their Mrs. Chen, though Jamie wished she was, had kind eyes behind her glasses as she explained the process. "Just tell us your story in your own words, Jamie. Take all the time you need." Jamie glanced at the packed courtroom. Emma and Mike sat directly behind Catherine Reeves, their lawyer. Sarah was between them, wearing her own blue dress in solidarity. Mrs. Chen sat next to them, as immovable as a mountain. Theo was there, too, separate from Richard's legal team, his face encouraging. Richard's chair was conspicuously empty. He'd been denied attendance due to the restraining order, but his expensive lawyers filled the opposite side of the courtroom, their expressions carefully neutral. Jamie took a deep breath, remembering how he and Sarah had practiced. "Start with what you know for sure," she'd advised, "like in our science project. Observations first, then conclusions." "I used to think it was normal," he began quietly, his voice carrying in the hushed room. The dark, the hurt, the medicine that made everything fuzzy. Dad said I was sick, that I needed special care, that Mom, his voice caught slightly, that Mom died because she didn't follow the rules. Catherine gently led him through the chronology, the escalating abuse, the forced medications, the isolation. Jamie described it all with the precise detail of a child who'd learned early to pay attention to every shadow, every change in mood. "And the wine cellar?" Catherine prompted softly. Jamie's hands clenched in his lap. Sarah had made him a small stress ball for this part, a balloon filled with rice, decorated with chicken stickers. He squeezed it now. "I broke a glass," he said, "an expensive one from great-grandfather's collection. Dad had been drinking. He dragged me down the stairs. It was dark, so dark and cold." He squeezed the stress ball harder. "I don't remember everything after that, just Emma's voice calling my name. She was crying, she picked me up, carried me out." "And then you ran?" Jamie nodded. "Emma said we had to go, had to hide until she could prove what was happening. She never lied to me, never said it would be easy, but she promised to keep me safe." He looked directly at the judge. "She did. She gave up everything to protect me." Richard's lead attorney stood. "Isn't it possible, Jamie, that you're confused about some of these events? Trauma can affect memory, especially in children." "I'm not confused." Jamie's voice grew stronger. "Emma taught me to document everything, just like Mom did. Times, dates, videos." He pulled a folded paper from his pocket. "I kept my own records too. Want to see?" The attorney faltered as Catherine presented Jamie's careful chronicles, pages of childish handwriting, recording incidents, injuries, overheard conversations. Some entries were barely legible, written in dark closets or under covers, but each one was dated, detailed, devastating in its simplicity. "June 15th, Jamie read from memory, not needing to see the pages. "Dad broke my arm because I cried during his business call. Told the doctor I fell off my bike. I don't have a bike." The courtroom was absolutely silent. "September 3rd, extra. Medicine before Grandpa's visit. Couldn't remember anything after. Dad said I was getting worse, needed more treatment." Judge Chen leaned forward. "Jamie, how did you know to keep these records?" "Mom's videos." Jamie looked at Theo as he spoke. "I found her old tablet hidden in the library. She recorded everything too, talked about building evidence, said sometimes the truth needs witnesses." His voice wavered. "She ran out of time." "But Emma made sure I had enough time." "And now," the judge asked gently, "what do you want to happen now?" Jamie sat straighter in the big chair. "I want to stay with my family." He gestured to the gathered group behind him. "All of them. Emma, who saved me. Mike, who gave us a home without asking questions. Sarah, who taught me about being brave and feeding chickens. Mrs. Chen, who makes everything better with dumplings and wisdom." He turned to Theo. "And Grandpa, who wants to build bridges with me." "That's quite a few people," Judge Chen observed, but her eyes were warm. "Yes," Jamie agreed. "But Mrs. Chen says the more pillars a bridge has, the stronger it stands. And—" He squeezed the stress ball one more time, finding his courage. "I don't want to hide anymore. I want to be strong enough to make sure Dad can't hurt anyone else." "Ever?" In the gallery, Sarah beamed with pride. Emma wiped tears from her cheeks. And Theo looked at his grandson with a mixture of grief and awe, seeing Catherine's strength shining through at last. Judge Chen's final custody order lay on Mike's kitchen table, its formal legal language somehow inadequate to capture the magnitude of change it represented. The document outlined an arrangement as unique as their situation: joint custody shared between Theodore Rothschild and Emma Sullivan, with Mike's home designated as Jamie's primary residence during the school year. "It's unprecedented," Catherine had explained during their final meeting. "But then, everything about this case has been unprecedented." The judge was particularly moved by Jamie's testimony about needing all his pillars of support. Now, a week After the ruling, their expanded family gathered around that same kitchen table to plan the logistics of their new reality. Mrs. Chen's dumplings steamed in bamboo baskets while Theo spread out blueprints for the changes he wanted to make to his house. The East Wing could be converted into a proper workshop, he explained to Jamie, who leaned forward with keen interest. Space for all your science projects, engineering experiments. Sarah too, of course, he added quickly, including his grandson's best friend in the plans without hesitation. Sarah bounced in her chair. Could we build a chicken coop? A fancy one with automatic feeders and temperature controls? And data collection systems, Jamie added, growing animated. For comparing it with Mrs. Chen's traditional coop, Theo's eyes misted as he watched Jamie's enthusiasm emerge. These moments of pure childhood excitement were becoming more frequent, each one a small victory over the past's shadows. Richard's lawyers filed their appeal, Linda mentioned quietly to the adults, while the children were absorbed in chicken coop design. She'd stopped by officially to deliver updated restraining order paperwork, but everyone knew she came for Mrs. Chen's dumplings. Emma's hand tightened around her teacup, but her voice remained steady. It won't change anything. The evidence is too strong, and public opinion is completely against him, Mike added. The media coverage had been overwhelming, but the narrative was clear. A wealthy man's abuse exposed, a brave nanny's sacrifice, a grandfather's redemption, and a small town's protection of a vulnerable child. Richard's board of directors has asked for his resignation, Theo confirmed. The family company's reputation, he trailed off, shaking his head, though that hardly matters compared to what he did to Jamie, to Catherine. Mrs. Chen set another basket of dumplings on the table. With unusual force, past is past, cannot change, but future. She gestured at Jamie and Sarah, now drawing elaborate chicken coop plans on the blueprint margins. Future we build together. The custody order included other provisions: mandatory therapy for Jamie, supervised visits with Richard only if Jamie chose to allow them in the future, continued FBI protection until all appeals were resolved. But watching the children plan their science sanctuary, these legal requirements seemed less important than the simple reality of their daily life. We'll need to adjust the schedule for science fair practice, Sarah was saying seriously, since Jamie will be at Grandpa Theo's every other weekend. I can help via video call, Theo offered immediately. And perhaps we could set up parallel chicken coops, compare data between locations. Jamie's eyes lit up at the suggestion. Like a multi-site research study? Emma, could we? Emma smiled at his excitement. I think that sounds perfect. Maybe Mike could help with the data tracking systems. Only if Mrs. Chen consults on optimal chicken raising conditions, Mike added, winking at their elderly neighbor. She's the expert, after all. Mrs. Chen nodded sagely. Chickens, like love, like children, grow better with many people caring. The doorbell rang, and Linda moved automatically to check the security camera they'd kept installed, even after the immediate danger passed. But it was only Catherine arriving with the final set of documents for everyone to sign. Sorry I'm late, she said, accepting a dumpling from Mrs. Chen. The judge wanted to review the educational arrangements one more time. She's particularly impressed with the idea of splitting time between regular school here and advanced engineering programs at the private academy near Theo's house. Jamie looked up from his drawings. I can do both? You can do anything you want, Theo said firmly. The trust fund your mother set up for you, I've had it transferred to a new account, protected, for college, projects, whatever dreams you want to pursue. Speaking of dreams, Sarah interjected, pushing her detailed chicken coop sketch forward. What about an automatic egg collection system, with cushions so the eggs don't break? The adults exchanged glances as the children dove back into their planning. Each of them had played a crucial role in reaching this moment. Emma's years of protective documentation, Mike's unhesitating offer of sanctuary, Mrs. Chen's steady wisdom, Theo's determination to make amends, Linda's unwavering pursuit of justice. Catherine's skilled legal maneuvering. Even Sarah, with her simple childhood certainty about right and wrong, had helped build this bridge to a better future. The custody order's final paragraph seemed to acknowledge this reality. The court finds that the best interest of the child is served by maintaining and nurturing all familial bonds, both blood and chosen, that contribute to his safety, growth, and happiness. 6 months later, Mrs. Chen's garden bloomed with spring flowers, their colors bright against the white chairs set up in neat rows. The wedding arch, handcrafted by Jamie and Theo during their weekend workshop sessions, combined elegant engineering with Sarah's artistic touch, white roses woven through its precise geometric structure. "Stop fidgeting," Sarah told Jamie as they waited for the ceremony to begin. Both children wore blue, Jamie in a suit that matched Mike's, Sarah in a flowing dress that made her look older than her 9 years. "The rings are still in your pocket. I checked twice." "I know." Jamie's hand brushed the pocket anyway, feeling the smooth bands within. "I just want everything to be perfect. Emma deserves perfect." Sarah squeezed his hand, still their signal for extra courage. "Dad says love doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be real." From the garden gate came the sound of a car door closing. Theo emerged, helping Emma from the vintage Rolls-Royce he'd insisted on providing. Her simple white dress caught the morning light, but it was her smile that transformed her, bright, unburdened, full of joy. "Ready?" Sarah whispered to Jamie as they took their places. The guests, a small gathering of those who'd become family through choice and circumstance, had turned to watch the procession begin. Mrs. Chen had outdone herself with the decorations. Paper cranes hung from tree branches, catching sunlight like prisms. The chicken coop, visible in the background, sported a festive banner declaring "Congratulations" in both English and Mandarin. Even the chickens seemed to sense the occasion's importance, clustering near the fence in their finest feathers. Linda, off duty but still scanning the perimeter out of habit, sat next to Catherine. Both women had become regular fixtures at family dinners, their professional roles evolving into deeper bonds. Tommy from the gas station occupied a front row seat, beaming with grandfatherly pride at the man he'd watched grow from teenage employee to station manager to something more. As the ceremony began, Jamie stood tall beside Mike, taking his role as best man seriously. Sarah matched his posture on Emma's side, the rings in Jamie's pocket representing more than just wedding bands. They were symbols of a family forged in crisis, strengthened by love, made official by choice. "Family," the officiant began, "comes to us in many ways, sometimes through birth, sometimes through marriage, and sometimes through moments of courage and compassion that change lives forever." Emma's eyes met Mike's, then moved to the children between them. So much had changed since that rainy night at the gas station. Jamie's nightmares had grown less frequent. His therapy sessions now focused more on future dreams than past trauma. The custody arrangement had settled into a rhythm that gave him the best of both worlds. Weekdays filled with normal school life and Sarah's friendship. Weekends at Theo's house exploring engineering and architecture. "In joining these two lives," the officiant continued, "we also celebrate the joining of these 4 hearts and the extended family that surrounds them." On cue, Jamie presented the rings. His hands were steady, his smile genuine. Sarah produced the unity candle they'd all decorated together, its surface covered in tiny, handwritten messages of love and hope. As Mike and Emma exchanged vows, Mrs. Chen dabbed at her eyes with an embroidered handkerchief. Theo, sitting beside her, offered a spare one from his pocket. They'd developed an unlikely friendship over the past months, the billionaire and the seamstress finding common ground in their love for Jamie and their shared appreciation for properly made dumplings. "By the power vested in me," the officiant's voice carried across the garden, "I now pronounce you husband and wife." The kiss was sweet and simple, accompanied by Sarah's delighted clapping and Jamie's more reserved but equally heartfelt applause. As the newlyweds turned to face their guests, Emma reached for the children, drawing them into the embrace. "Perfect," Sarah whispered to Jamie as they hugged their parents. "See? Told you it would be." The reception moved to tables scattered through the garden, where Mrs. Chen's famous dumplings held pride of place among more traditional wedding fare. The chicken coop's automatic feeding system, Jamie and Theo's latest project, chimed musically as it dispensed afternoon treats to its residents. Later, as the fairy lights began to twinkle in the growing dusk, Jamie found a quiet moment with Emma near the rose arch. "Happy?" he asked softly, still sometimes unsure of his place in this expanding family. Emma drew him close, pressing a kiss to his forehead. "More than I ever dreamed possible. You know what Mrs. Chen says about happiness." Jamie smiled, quoting their neighbor's familiar wisdom. "Like good dumpling, best when shared with family." From the dance floor came Sarah's laugh as Mike attempted to teach Theo a simple box step. Mrs. Chen directed the moment with her usual authority, demonstrating the proper rhythm with surprising grace. "Our family," Emma agreed, holding Jamie close. "All of it." 1 year to the day after Emma and Jamie first huddled behind the dumpster, Mike stood behind the counter of what was now Thompson's Gas and Go. The purchase had been Theo's wedding gift to the couple, a chance to transform the place where their story began into something more. The security cameras were new, the lighting better, but the heart of the place remained the same. A safe harbor for those in need, no questions asked, which was why Mike didn't hesitate when he saw the young woman on the monitor, clutching a toddler as she crouched beside the air pump. Her eye was swollen, her movements painfully familiar. Emma, now co-owner and night manager, was already reaching for the phone. "I'll call Linda and Mrs. Chen," Mike added, grabbing the umbrella from behind the counter. Rain fell steadily. Outside, just as it had that night a year ago. From the back office, where Jamie and Sarah were doing their homework, came the sound of quiet conversation and occasional laughter. Their science fair project, comparing customer service satisfaction between Thompson's Gas and Go and the franchise station across town, had taken first place last week. The ribbon hung proudly next to the station's new mission statement. "Community first, always." Mike stepped into the rain, umbrella ready, hope in his heart. "Hello," he called softly to the frightened woman. "I'm not here to cause trouble. Just wanted to check if you're okay." The woman clutched her child closer, but something in Mike's voice made her look up. "I've got hot coffee inside," he offered, "and my wife makes the best chicken soup in town, no questions asked." Behind him, Emma appeared with a blanket. Above them, the station's new sign glowed warmly in the rain. "All are welcome here." Some stories, after all, deserve to repeat themselves.